Hey everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. My name's Peter. I'm the host of this stream. And thanks for joining us this evening. We're here at the beginning, sort of early April. Hope you're having a great month so far. Hey, welcome. Welcome, Sprawa. Nice to have you here. Tonight, what are we doing tonight? So we're going to do a pretty standard thing that we do every so often here on the stream and do like a Q&A session. I actually had some ideas for something I wanted to try tonight, but it kind of was... Hey, Michael. There was some stuff I was thinking about maybe trying this evening, but I was messing around with it yesterday because I wasn't really sure how exactly to do it with something I saw from actually my wife saw the side effects Instagram and was like, hey Zach, how's it going? She showed me some thing that side effects had posted, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I wonder how you would do that. So I tried messing around with it, but it wasn't working exactly. So I got to figure some stuff out. But anyways, so instead, we'll do a little Q&A tonight and just kind of leave it open to you guys to be, what it is that you want to talk about. So I'm here. I am all ears. Please feel free to ask away whatever you might want. One thing I will say is that if you have any questions, please obviously put them in the chat. If you're interested in, we can obviously talk about them a bit more. Don't feel shy if you have something you think is like a dumb question or something. There's no dumb questions here. So especially with Houdini. So please feel free to ask away, ask whatever you'd like. If you would like to join the Discord server as well, there is a link at houdinihangout.com. You can get to the Discord server there. Lots of conversation happening over there, which is cool. I'm always excited about that. Some folks on there were able to help solve somebody's problem that they were struggling with. And so that was really cool. It's always cool to see people get help. It's kind of the whole point of why this is even here, right? Is to help learn and grow and things like that. So that's the idea for tonight. We're going to do a little Q&A session. Feel free to drop your questions, comments, ideas in the chat, and we can talk a little bit more about them. I guess I'll just kind of talk a little bit about what I'm hoping to do in the future. So as I'm waiting for any questions to come in here. Let me pull this up. It's on, I can just get to it through sideeffects.com. It's through their Instagram post somewhere. Where is it? Oh, wow. They really repost a lot of stuff on there. That's awesome. There's actually this, let me see here. Where are we? Okay. It's actually this really cool animation here, and it's like all like slicing this stuff up multiple times, like kind of continually throughout the simulation. And so this is something I was playing around with it a little bit, and I obviously know of like a pretty simple, like not simple, like kind of the quicker way of doing something like this, where you would just basically keep just kind of going down the line and adding to new, adding new solvers and stuff like that down the line. But so I was really hoping to do it all within one solver. I got close. I just felt like I was missing like one or two little things. So I'm going to ask some questions and see if I can't figure out the exact workflow of doing something similar to this. I mean, it wasn't exactly this, but anyways. So I want to do something like this. I just thought it looks really cool, and I just was very interested in the technique. So yeah, I'm going to Gonna kind of sit on that and think about that a little bit. Also, I've been chatting with Mark Fancher a bit. And so I think we're going to have him back and do a little conversation at some point in the not too distant future, go through something maybe that he's done with their company. So we've been talking a little bit and just figuring stuff out. I know he's a busy guy, but we're going to see if we can't get something together. So I think that would be cool. It's kind of vague, but having issues controlling Vellum using the Mops fetch attribute. Okay, that's interesting. So what specifically are you trying to do with that? You're trying to, let's see here. So let's see. Just type Vellum. Just let me type Vellum. Make a geometry node. Sim. Let's just go inside of this here. We'll just do a planar patch. We high just any general use case, honestly. So yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly the workflow with that. Let's see here. Let's just do a Vellum configure cloth. So we'll do that. Let's just top seam. We'll just pin that in place maybe for right now. Yep, those are pinned. Cool. Solver, drop that down. Okay, so we've got this cloth here. It should just give it a second for the kernel. What's happening? Yes, gravity is on. That's so weird. Why is that not? Did I put, maybe I put the wrong one on here. Let me see. An Axiom session. Oh, I don't even own Axiom, so that would be tricky for me to do. But that's cool. That would be cool, I guess. What in the heck is going on here? That is so weird. Planar patch top. Let me just see. Visualize pin to target. There we go. Hello, everybody. Hey, Axis and everybody. Welcome. What in the world is going on here? That is so bizarre. Like, that is the weirdest thing. Okay, well, we just won't do that. All right, let's go back here and just pin these points. There we go. Is it just not stretching? What's happening? It's so weird. Okay, let's just do a pop wind or something here. Force. Let's do noise. Add a little bit. All right, let's just see here. Okay. Interesting. There must have been something that changed here. I feel like because, or maybe maybe this is just too small of a patch. Maybe I just need to do like this. Sorry. Top. Let me just do this again. Okay. It's working. I'm just being a doofus. Okay. Anyways. All right. So we had the, Mops, fetch attribute here. Right. So this is going to, so the idea here is that this is going to be taking an attribute and putting it into your simulation, right? So you've got something like this, and I could probably just put this up at the top of this here, I think. So let's, all right, so we're just going to grab SOP here. And so we're going to fetch an attribute, right? So let's just say, I don't know. Let's just grab a sphere here. I think this is how this works. So let's grab a sphere. Do it as a polygon. Maybe something like that. Let's do this with velocity. So we'll do point velocity. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing everybody's comments there in the chat, just so everybody knows. I will get to some questions in a second. So that's great. Thank you for all the great questions so far. Okay, so we've got this point velocity here. Let's do this in the negative z maybe, or just in the z is fine. Let's do it like 1 or something there. Let's add a null here, and we could see there's our points right there, and we'll just say out velocity, right? And so this is going to have a v attribute on it. So within here, we should be able to, so our destination is going to be our geometry, right? Which is important. That's going to be our Vellum object geometry here. And our source path, we're going to grab from that out velocity right here. And so let's grab the attribute here. We're going to say v, and the, float vector. That's great. Destination size should be 3, I believe. Let's see here. Let's see if that works for us. And it does look like it's working. Let's see here. And I think, yeah, this is going to be the apply attribute. This is just going to be doing a fetch attribute. Oh, right. The other thing we probably would want to do is actually have this transfer. Sorry. So the better way to do this would be to be transferring it, because I think it's just randomly selecting from this here. So let's actually do this. Let's take this cloth here and do an attribute transfer. We'll just move this down here. So this will be where it's going to, this will be where it's coming from. And so let's just make this a bit smaller. There we go. Maybe something like that. And we'll just do a transform here, and I'll just do a back and forth maybe with this. So we've got our sphere, and just want to translate it back and forth. So let's do a sine of the frame. Where's that going to put us here? How far does that go back and forth? It's too far, I'd say. So let's do a sine. Let's make that a little smaller. We'll just multiply this maybe by a quarter. Cool. Okay, so then there's our velocity getting applied to that. And I believe that should now fetch that velocity and place it in there. Let's double check here. Actually, I'm going to turn off this pop wind just so we can see what's going on here. Yep. And there we go. I've got this pushing back and forth. It's a bit slow, so let's just adjust that here. So let's say maybe times 4. How's that look? Yeah, it's pretty good. Cool. All right, so now we can look at this here. So this is the idea with this node here, right? Is that we can move attributes back and forth into this solver here. And so instead of having to do some sort of super complicated thing, we're basically Zach, your question there on this one is any reason why the attribute transfer is happening after the Vellum constraint SOP? Yeah, so the question is after this right here. And so the only reason I'm doing it that way is just so that I know that this is the same geometry that's going in there. So it's an equivalent. You could do it either way. It's not a huge deal either way. So yeah, you can use either thing. So yeah, it's just basically making sure that this geometry matches the geometry that's coming into here. And that's why I did the attribute transfer at that point. But basically, you could do this with anything, right? Like we could change p-scale of stuff coming in, you could change the velocity of something. You could change all sorts of stuff. So that's the really nice thing about using this fetch attribute, because it's going to basically pull those attributes right into your solver and update them as you go, right? Because the real thing to understand about DOPS that's different than SOPs is that it's kind of dependent on the frame before it. And so what it mainly is looking for is the initial condition and then going frame by frame from there. If you want to inject anything in there, you have to kind of do some special stuff to be able to make that work. And that's why this Mops fetch attribute is really nice, because it'll do that kind of special thing for you and pull the attribute in and inject it into the right spot in the geometry. So it's just a nice way to kind of go about making sure that these things work. So yeah, so there you go. There's a little example for you, Ruben, of how that might work. So there we go. All right, so I'm going to get back to the I'm going to get back to some of these questions here. So the next question was from Gideon, and been skim watching my USD course kind of stuff and side effects. It's great, but does it really make the workflow faster? And how useful is it in terms for simulation, for that type of thing? Yeah, no problem, Ruben. You're very welcome. So a couple things there. So in regards to Solaris, right? That is, I think there's sort of this misconception about exactly how it's supposed to work, right? So Solaris, the idea is that it is helpful for look dev, lighting, layout, and rendering, right? So with those things, that is what Solaris is useful for, right? We're not doing simulation in Solaris. Simulation is still done within SOPs. It's still done within DOPS and SOPs. I'm sorry, DOPS technically, but it's still done within traditional Houdini workflows. So there is no difference between how you're going to be doing simulations if you're using Solaris or if you're rendering it some other way. There is no difference. So that's one kind of important thing to think about. Now, the big difference comes in when we're talking about the end result of your project, right? Rendering, lighting, look dev, things like that. Now, layout can be a little tricky, but layout is usually referring a bit more to the larger scale kind of scene building stuff that happens in, film and TV workflows, games workflows, things like that. So what I would say is that unless you're doing some huge like scene layout type thing, that's what Solaris is made for as well. If you're doing something small, Solaris may or may not be helpful for you. Sorry, just got my zipper on this thing. Sorry. Anyways, so I think one of the things that I would look to, if you're knowing that you want to get into Solaris and go that route with, after a simulation, instead of saving your files as BGO files, save them as a USD file. It's really not going to change that much about your workflow. It will, but once you've saved it as a USD file, that is kind of the crux of what USD wants. It wants files on disk that it can quickly compose into a scene and quickly turn into kind of this scene graph idea. And so from that standpoint, you really want to have as much on disk as you can. The kind of idea of having every single thing live linked from traditional Houdini workflows into Solaris, it's not always the best thing, I find. There's times when it works great, but you're constantly translating, right? That file. Anytime you scrub the timeline, you're translating. So you're going to have a hit on performance there. If you are, so like you cache it as a BGO, right? So you're like, oh, this file's cached. Well, yeah, it is cached, but it has to make that transition every time. I see. So asking the sim itself, after the sim, I wanted to, for example, instance the smoke or flip here and there. And that's, yeah, exactly. So if you're doing that kind of stuff, if you're instancing or doing anything like that, USD is going to be so nice for you. It's going to work so much better than any other workflow within Houdini, as far as, managing those things. Like when you have, your sim saved to disk and you want to instance it, it's so easy to do in Solaris. It's really it's kind of a no-brainer, I think, to be doing stuff like that. So I would definitely say it's useful. I think there are some challenges, like as far as understanding different ways of working, but you're working with a scene description language, or file basically in real time. And so you're much closer to kind of that rendering state than a lot of other softwares let you get. So that's, I think, where a lot of the confusion can come in. So because we're not kind of explicitly holding your hand at every step, there are things that are in process that will continue to make these workflows easier. That's where we're at with Solaris, is just trying to make workflows easier for the smaller studio, I would say, or smaller single user. That's the hardest part, because like studios are already on board and using Solaris and it's great, and USD and all that kind of stuff. It's really more in the individual where it's like, I don't have a team of people building a pipeline. So there's definitely some things that can be tricky, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. I think once you get over a little hump, it just kind of starts to all flow and make sense, and you can kind of make sense of it. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. I know it's a big question, but yeah. Cool. So there's a few questions here. Okay, so let's get in. So let's see here. So we have Steve. It looks like he asked a couple times about, so Steve Barrett asked a few times about learning Houdini, using Modo and C4D. Okay, yeah, that's cool. And there, Yuri's asking the same thing about C4D. Think it's worth learning Houdini. Yeah, so for me, I actually came from Cinema 4D. That was my main software that I used for many years professionally. I worked in a small studio, and that was what we used. I think at this point they've now moved over to Blender. Blender's free if you haven't heard. That's a joke. Yeah, so I used C4D for a long time. I think I first started using that in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, and then used that all the way through until I got my job at Side Effects. I would still use it. Cool, Gideon. Glad that helped a little bit. So So I think it's worth, I mean, you're asking someone that loves Houdini. So I'm quite biased. I mean, I started this channel just for fun. So, I mean, I do like Houdini. Um, so I think for me, what it was I kept running into these limits of, I want to make something really cool in Cinema 4D, and I didn't have the ability to do it. Now, granted, there have been a lot of changes there, I'm sure. But in order to do a lot of those cool things, it would be, you'd have to really have plugins and additional things kind of laid on top of Cinema so that you could actually do the things you wanted to do, whether it's, different pyro, for example, wasn't even a thing in there, and fluids and, X particles. Everything was kind of always a hack or a cheat or something like that. And it just felt so restrictive. I'd want to make some sort of a modification. I'd want to fix some UVs. I'd want to do X, Y, or Z. And it felt like I had to do this really roundabout way of getting stuff done in there. But what I think that's my biggest thing is, like, if you're starting to run up against creative issues in there, that's when I would say that Houdini is just, you're the limitation. The software doesn't limit you. It just isn't going to limit you ever. Half of the improvements that are made to Houdini year on year are not like a rewrite of something in Houdini. It's literally just taking the existing nodes that are there and putting together new tooling for people. It's not like the previous software couldn't, quote unquote, do it. I mean, there's some things that are fundamentally new. Copernicus is one of them. Apex is another. There's some of those things, but like the SOP based tooling in like, for fluids, for example, is not like it's all stuff that exists in Houdini. It's just making the workflows, right? So that's kind of what I always say, is that I was the limitation. I'm the limitation now with Houdini, whereas like Cinema always felt like I'd run up against these weird arbitrary barriers that you just like couldn't get past for some dumb reason. So that's my 2 cents on that. I think it's great if you're running into that. I used Modo like really briefly, just like to test it out, and it was cool. I thought it was a really good piece of software. It wasn't exactly what I needed. But yeah, it's good for modeling and stuff like that. I think if you want to do procedural modeling, if you like doing that type of thing where you can set up different kind of tools that make or build things for you, Houdini's amazing at that. And you can also then take that and put that into other DCCs, Unreal, Unity, 3D Studio Max, Maya, that type of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope. You could find yourself loving it and never wanting to go back. So that was kind of where I ended up. So I love the simulation side of Houdini. That was where I got hooked on it, and from there it just kind of has grown. So yeah, hopefully that answers it a little bit. Sorry, let me see here. Steve's also asking, does Houdini utilize generative AI for modeling, blah, blah, blah? No, we don't have any generative AI in our software. Many reasons for that. One of the main ones being that the legal question marks around that are just something we have no interest in taking part of. So that's one thing. We're a relatively small company, Side Effects. And yeah, we're not going to get embroiled in some sort of legal issue. Some big, legal action by some company at some point or whatever, that's going to cause millions and millions of dollars of fines or whatever, is something that apparently Adobe and them can just stomach, but Side Effects has no interest in that. But for other senses of it, I don't think we really see ourselves as a generative AI company ever, because what we inherently do is try to give creatives tools that they can use how they'd like to. Now, obviously, if you want to implement AI stuff, to be completely transparent, I think generative AI is just the dumbest thing that's ever happened, and I have no interest in it. But I mean, if people want to implement it in Houdini, they're free to do that. There's plenty of people that have done that. What we're probably looking at more so are things like machine learning tools that have been kind of coming down the pipe for a long time, and just working in that space. I mean, machine learning is something that side effects is more interested than like generative AI. So like, what if you could have a better way of calculating something in the background for you that's getting calculated anyways just by math? Like that's a one to, like, what's the difference on if it's a math formula or some sort of machine learning algorithm? Like, it doesn't really matter at that point. Like, there's nothing there. But yeah, so generative AI we've not really touched. So there you go. There's your answer on that. I could talk about that all day, but Axes was saying, what do you think of Mops Plus? If you had to choose again, would you take it again? Yeah, I mean, I own Mops Plus. I think it's a great tool. Actually just renewed my license of it. So I think it's a good tool. I think it's really, really nice. It depends on what it is that you're looking to do with it. I think if you're looking to come from a more Cinema 4D background and get into things that are more familiar to you in that sense, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's really good. So yeah, I think it's good. Yeah. So, Yuri, you were saying, Houdini's impressive. Too bad it's tough to get started. I think so. Yeah, it's tough to get started because it's different, because everything's procedural and that's just a different way of working. And everything's node based, and it's just a different way of working. And I think it's funny because I deal with a lot of students, and the students that get to Houdini earlier in their career, they have less trouble with it. And I think that's just plain and simple. So that's why we tell students, like, we're not saying you have to use Houdini for everything, but the sooner you get used to it, like, and make sense of what that is, like, you're going to be stronger in Houdini, stronger in your other programs, and you're going to be better at program. Like, there's so many things that Houdini kind of makes you want to get into that's so helpful for all sides of your workflow. So even if you're not using Houdini for everything, it's just really nice to get that kind of mental. It's just a different way of thinking about things. But anyway, so yeah, it can be tough to get started. All right, Sprawa, you had a question here too. I don't know if you can answer my question. What kind of Houdini improvement is generally considered as the most important for side effects? Is it something in particular? Oh, I just saw X's your reply there. Yeah. Yeah, I think the DOP part can really save time. Yeah, because DOPS is is honestly the hardest part, I think, of Houdini. Like, getting into those really, really deep DOP networks is the hardest thing. And really what the Mops Plus tools help you with is getting your attributes in and out of DOPS. It's so much easier than it would be otherwise. So I think that's cool. Yeah, Steve is just saying machine learning is great. Looking for more control of my images and a faster texture and renders. Generative AI is too random. Yeah, just not my thing. I'd rather bash my head against the wall for 2 days than type something in and have something come out. That's just not how I like to. Yeah, I enjoy the difficulty of things. So whatever. I'll be the old man, probably just yelling at the clouds, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, so back to what side effects is considered most important for side effects. I can't say that there's one thing. I mean, I've never been in a meeting where somebody gets up and says, this is the most important thing that side effects thinks. I think what side effects really cares about most is what is going to be helpful for our users. That's, I think, top to bottom, the most, that's like the most talked about thing, is like, what can best serve our users, the people that like to use our software, and maybe even the people that haven't started. How can we get them to enjoy using it more? Yeah, I have to say that it's very encouraging to be in a lot of those meetings, because it's never like, this is what we think this is what we think is most like what everybody should be doing. It's more like this is what our users have told us, and this is what we've interpreted from that. Like I'm just thinking of something so simple like the Feather tools when those came out. I know that the guy that was the main developer for that talked to tons of clients of ours, got ideas from from a lot of people of different ways that they go about doing things, and kind of figured out what would work best with the way Houdini's built, and then build it that way. And it's like we want to hear from users. I mean, honestly, I think we hear too little from users. Like users are always, I think, a little scared to like reach out and like give feedback on things, which is kind of unfortunate. I try to like encourage people to like, if they have a request for for a feature, throw it in, put it in the mix. I mean, there's a limited number of people. If you knew the size of some of the dev teams, you'd be like, wait, how many people are doing this one feature in this group of features in Houdini? Oh, and they're also working on it's crazy. It is insane. Definitely not a huge company, but yeah, I think that's the thing that I'm always encouraged by is how much we care about what our users are doing with our software. And then when we're surprised by that, how can we kind of adjust and pivot for them, so that the tools are better. Cool. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, and I can't speak for all of side effects, but that's the general gist of it. Any thoughts or opinions on the future of Houdini? This is from Greg. Wow, that's Ostifichuk. Wow, that's a long, I don't know how to say that. Apex seems to be a big upcoming focus. Curious on your thoughts. Yeah. So yes, Apex is definitely, I'm enjoying the help in the chat. Yeah, that's, that's exactly it. Yeah, you should be able to do that. So Apex, that's, as thoughts or opinions on the future of Houdini. Apex seems to be big upcoming focus. Yeah. Apex animation stuff is a general large focus for Houdini. The Apex stuff is part of the animation workflows. There's also the the fact that it's kind of used in Copernicus behind the scenes. I think the idea behind that is just it's cool and crazy. And it's been actually like a whole process that's kind of gotten us to that point. There's a lot of these little things that are hidden under the hood of what Houdini can do. Like the reason that Apex works is because we've basically made all of most of the SOP nodes into compilable functions. Basically, they're like verbs, and so you can just you can execute those functions as compiled code basically, and that's actually built into the Python side of things too as well. So stuff in the viewport, you can create geometry in the viewport through Python that doesn't exist in your scene by just invoking SOP stuff. It's really crazy. And it's on just this different level of thought process where you're it's all about building this network in a way that the computer can then execute that as quick as possible when you ask for it. So it is kind of taking it's not breaking the procedural nature of Houdini, but it's making Houdini a little bit less live to be able to get more performance out of it, as far as live from every node being live. More so like as you like when you build a rig in Apex, it's not until you execute it at the end or ask it to be executed, that's when everything kind of comes live. So yeah, so that's the that's kind of the idea behind Apex. And like saving networks as geometry, you know, as far as just ways to be able to manipulate it. There's a lot of levels there that is just really cool. So I think, and that stuff's been coming for a while. It's went from like the compiling, like from compiled blocks to invoke graphs, and then now it's to Apex, and it's kind of those. I think I did a stream on that at some point. Hopefully I did. I feel like I did at some point, but those are kind of the stepping stones up to. I've talked about it before at least, but those are the stepping stones up to what Apex now does, and was kind of a incremental thing along the way of that. So yeah, I don't know what else on the future. I mean, there's stuff. Yeah, I don't want to comment on that because I know some of the things, very high level things, and I don't want to comment on them just because that's would be probably inappropriate of me to do. So I don't want to comment on things, but I don't want to get into too much. So anyways, I just don't want to say something stupid. So anyways, that's where we'll leave that. Gideon had another question. I was just wondering if there's any possibility that we can connect the option. Let me see what that is. I'm not even, I think I know what you're talking about, Gideon. Let me just swap over here. Let me just see here. Geo flip solver. I'm assuming you mean this one. No, it can't be this one because this one doesn't have the distribution. I'm guessing that you mean in the DOP network. So let's do a DOP network here. Boy, I do this so infrequently these days. It's crazy. I use so many SOP level solvers. Let's see here. So it would be a flip solver. And it's this, right? This is what it is that you're looking for, right? Okay, so the distribution, what that is for if you're using something like HQ, you can actually slice up, yeah. So the reason that there's not a ton of information on it is that it's kind of become less and less useful over time, I would say. When H15 back in those days, I remember seeing this. This was actually one of the features that I saw at SIGGRAPH when I went shortly after H15, and they were talking about distributed simulations. And so that is mainly, I believe, controlled through HQ, which is the render and simulation manager that's built in Houdini. I believe you could also do something similar with, I think you could do it with Deadline as well. I think you can do a similar distribution with Deadline. It's not really a top thing because, at least that I can think of, would there be a top node for that? So the reason like that it became less helpful is that individual computers have gotten a lot more powerful. And so at the time, this is probably, gosh, what year is that? It's probably 10 years ago now. I mean, we didn't even, like, I have a 32 core computer. Like at that point, it was like common to have 4 and 8 core. Even that would have been a high core count, 8 core computer. So, and they were much slower cores as well. So at this point, I think the benefit of distributing the sim, splitting it up, having network communication between multiple machines to be able to pass information back and forth on large scale sims, I think we don't just really see much use of it, honestly. I think especially like in large places, like they'll probably do distributed sims if it's like a gigantic simulation. But I mean, you're talking about like it's probably being distributed on 128 core machines or something like that with like terabytes of RAM and like a fiber optic internet connect or Ethernet connecting each of them. You know, it's like it's not as practical for like a single person to use. It's not really going to do you much good. And if you're using a top network on your own computer, it's really just distributing it on your computer. So it's not gonna be any faster. It's actually gonna be slower if you could get that to work somehow. Because you just distributing it is just, Tops is just running instances of Houdini right in the background. Unless you're doing them in process. If you're doing them out of process, it spins up extra copies of Houdini in the background to run it. Headless versions of Houdini. So it really would just be extra overhead that wouldn't really be helpful. I don't think there's any distributed. I bet you if you use this, I bet you would use it to do this. Sorry, I'm just looking here. I think you could do the scheduling through like using an HQ scheduler in Tops to run that, and that would probably do it. Like you could use that side of it, but I don't really think that there's as big of a performance increase for an individual. There's not really any individual use like improvement. I tried to look into this years ago. I tried to set up my own HQ thing, and this again was 7-8 years ago, and I ran into problems there, and just I ran into difficulties, and it was just kind of like it really wasn't worth it for what I thought I could get out of it. So sorry that's not probably the best answer, but that's kind of the situation there. In the ROP fetch. Sorry. So if you wanted to look for more information on that, I would probably, let's see. One thing that a lot of people I find don't always know about the help, like a lot of people will go to the help system like this way, right? Like you hit the question mark and it brings up the help system. It's great, but there's actually a lot more that's kind of difficult to get to, and you want to kind of come back up to the top level and look for some stuff. So let me see if I can find where that would be. Probably under fluids. So this is going to be the good Lord, that is an old image there, isn't it? This is going to be the best I can kind of explain from it, right? Like this kind of stuff. I don't really know much beyond that side of it. So you definitely can do it through Tops, but you're going to have to use it through HQ to be able to distribute it. So that's kind of the thing. And if you're looking to do that and you are in a large studio, get in touch with support, and they can get you in touch with someone that'll help implement that, so that would be my suggestion there. Cause I think it's a bit more, it's not just for like individual users that much. I mean, nobody has, if you have like a dozen machines sitting around your house, you want to do that. So loading another HIP file into, I'm not sure what that means. I'm sure Tom's on another level, man. Tom I love Tom. He's great. He's actually coming to visit very soon. We're going to go to a hockey game. But anyways, yeah, Tom, I don't know what Tom's talking about with that. So if you have a comment or something, like if you have some, you can always, maybe, I don't know how you could get me to notice that, but you could make a reply to that message and at me in it. And then I could see, cause I'm not sure exactly what, he was saying, but anyways, yeah, so that's distribution stuff. Hopefully that, makes any sense to you. I know it's not probably the best answer. So Steve also asked, in your opinion, what's the best pro plan to use for learning? Are all features available for testing? Thanks for the honest feedback. The best pro plan. I think what you might be asking is like, well, first of all, if you want to play around with Houdini, you can use Houdini Apprentice. That's a free version. Pretty much everything's available in there. There's some limitations on rendering. There's watermarks. You can't export stuff out of there. But beyond that, you can pretty much learn how to do whatever your computer can handle. There's no real lockdown feature set. From there, if you want to get into more professional side of things, if you want to do like third-party rendering and that type of stuff, Houdini Indie is what you could use to kind of like as a hobbyist kind of use it, or as like a small freelancer. There's like income limitations on that. That's actually something I've brought up several times to our like business side of things internally. So we'll see. Maybe maybe someday there'll be a change in that, because I feel like it's some of the limitations there are a bit arbitrary. But anyways, Houdini Indie, you can use that. You can use third-party renders with that. It basically takes away any limitation. Just saves out a separate type of file. And then there's effects, and that's the full version. If you're looking for like training stuff, there's lots of good training if that's kind of stuff you're looking for. There you go. Tom's a small freelancer. Yeah, you can use it for that for sure. Yeah, you just have to be in the right price bracket for that. Anyways, so I think for learning materials, there's a couple things that come to mind. Like Houdini School is a great place. There's lots of stuff there that people really, really like the teaching. They're kind of always updating their courses and stuff. So that's a cool one. It's online. Deb is awesome. She runs that, Deb Isaac. So that's a great place to look if you're looking for like professional training. I really enjoyed Steve Nipping's, tutorials on like simulation and stuff like that. I think it's called Applied Houdini. That was great. Not sure if he's updated that recently or not. That's a good one. I think Double Jump has some really cool courses. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, maybe that's a good starting point. Oh, there we go. Tops lets you run ROPs from different hip files. Yeah, okay. I think just to kind of go back to that quick. Oh, Hip Flask. Yeah, that's another one that people really like too. Yeah. There's also like Houdini Course, maybe. That's like a more introductory one, I think. Shafiq. Nice. Yeah, so there we go. Also, you asked, is Houdini good on the Mac? I haven't used it on Mac in a long time. But a lot of people love the new Macs with it. There was anything that would need NVIDIA to run isn't going to work on it, obviously. So like Karma XPU wouldn't work. I don't think you get good Vulkan support yet, but obviously we're in the process of making that work. It's just Vulkan isn't. Apple's got to be different. Apple's got to Apple. So anyways, so there's some of that stuff that's a little weird, but there you go. So Gideon, okay, back to your question there about loading a ROP from another HIP file. I think what he's saying is that I've never done this before, but I'm guessing what you could do is it's basically like, imagine running it in like a command line type concept where you're basically opening a file, running it in the background, getting something from the ROP on it, I think is what he's saying. I don't know. I'd need for him to elaborate on that one. I'm not 100% sure what he's even commenting on there. But yeah, Tom likes to get into deep stuff, and he's a very smart guy. So okay, looks like Johan asked a question here as well. Playing with OpenCL and COPS. Do you think it'll be possible to implement the XYZ dist primuv and intersect functions from Vex to OpenCL? That's an interesting question. I don't know much about OpenCL. If you're asking, is side effects going to implement that, I could not even begin to guess on that one. That's like so far above my head that I don't even really know. I've never really gotten into any OpenCL programming really at all. So like I could probably understand what the code said if I looked at it. I just don't know the syntax at all. So sorry. Okay. So, do I think it would be, I'm sure it would be possible to do it yourself, but again, I don't even know where to begin with something like that. I have a feeling that that would be something that they would want to have better parity with Vex as far as things that can be written. But the thing to think about here too is that Vex and OpenCL have very different requirements, right? So just something to kind of think about here. And I don't know really the implications of it, but like you have Vex that's running on the CPU, right? And it's this, what is it? It's like a SIMD. It's basically like able to like multi-thread itself really easily, basically, and do a lot of things simultaneously. So it's like the way that it compiles is going to be much different because it's expecting to run on the CPU versus OpenCL has to compile and run on a like even more highly threaded and parallel processor than a CPU would even be. And so just the architecture of both of those things working is going to be really different. So like, just like with like when you do like a like when you have a for each, you want to compile it, right? There's certain types of nodes that can't go into there because there's certain like logic that happens inside of those nodes that just can't be compiled into a piece of code, right? And so I think that's why some of those things are like inherently going to be different. Just like with when we started doing Karma XPU versus CPU, like CPU can handle doing principled shaders and all that kind of stuff, which is a Vex like coding. It's like all VOPs and Vex and stuff like that, right, to make the principal shader. But for XPU, those just don't work. You have to use Material X nodes because of the way that those compile versus a Vex based thing. So I think that's probably at play there. So I think that's the reason why you're going to see some differences. And I don't know if those are inherent like limitations that are causing those things to not be available there, or if it's just hasn't been able to be gotten to yet. I'm not really sure, but it's a different language too. So, I mean, we have to would have to port some of those things over, right? Cool. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, maybe they'll implement. Reason I ask because OpenCL has other Vex functions. Yep. Steve is also asking again about, have you used ChatGPT or other AIs? I've never used ChatGPT or other AIs. I was editing in Premiere, which I'm starting to just not even want to do that anymore, even though I'm used to it. The other day, just some educational stuff that I'm doing for work, and the literally, well, I think I used Midjourney when it first came out because I thought it was funny, and so like I used that, I guess, a little bit before like everybody was like, this, let's just replace people, but anyway, so I thought that was a pretty funny image generator. But yeah, no, I've not used it, so I can't really speak to that at all. But the problem is going to be is how much input, training data exists for said thing. And so any AI chatbot is going to be worse at Vex than it will be at Python. There's just literally no way it could be better at Vex than Python, or equal, because how many millions of people use Python and how many maybe a couple thousand people use Vex? Like, it's not that many people. So it is a vastly different scale of information that goes into it. So it can't predict code as well with the limited amount of data that exists for it. As far as, I mean, it's a language that looks like, what is it? C, I think it's a C-like language. I don't know. First time I ever started programming was in Houdini. So, but so it probably can see that it looks like C, and that there's probably a lot more literature out there, but like specific functions and stuff like that, it just makes up a lot of times. And, we've had internally just people joke about that and like laugh and like, oh yeah, that's a funny, like the people that literally write the functions are like, oh, that's a function that doesn't exist. That's cool. Like multiple times in code and things like that. So it's fine. I mean, it works, but like, yeah, I'd rather sit and type and try to think of, oh, what is the function I need for that or whatever. Like, I find Vex to be pretty easy to write. Like, it doesn't take that much to think about. And it's so powerful. So I'd rather know it than, have something spit it out for me. But yeah, anyways. Yeah. And if you're looking for Vex information, Matt Estella, his Joy of Vex, people really like. And I did a video series on that as well. So you can find that on cgwiki.com. Just again, if you want to join the Discord, there's the Discord link. I've got a button, so I'll just push it and you can go if you want to. Yeah. So cool. Today, ChatGPT told me to use 2World. Yeah. I never used that one before. I think that's Python. I don't think I'm trying to think, because I don't think we camel case our functions. Do we? Gosh, now I'm thinking here. I don't think we camel case our functions in Vex. No, we do it. Well, sometimes maybe. I think we're not supposed to. I think when you make a new function, it's supposed to be primarily all lowercase. So that in and of itself, like the number of conversations internally that you see about people naming things wrong, it's so funny. There's so many conversations about, oh, you named this thing wrong, or you named that thing wrong, or you need to rename this thing. It's very funny. I don't do it, so it's not part of my job, but I see it in Slack channels and it just always makes me laugh, because it's like, you capitalize the wrong part of this word, or this should be this way, or this should have an underscore in it. And like, there's like syntax rules that we have internally for like naming things. I mean, obviously we're human beings and mess up sometimes, but it is interesting. So yeah, just looking at that, I just look at that. I'm like, yeah, it looks like a Python function to me, but Lots of chat GPT questions today. That's very, very interesting. I mean, I guess that's what everybody thinks about, but yeah. Cool. Any other questions or anything like that? I don't want to just have to BS my way through some stuff here, I guess, if we don't have any for a little bit here. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. AI taking over. People just, yeah. People want to make more money. A few people want to make a lot more money, and so we have AI. There we are. Let me see what's here. Anything that I missed? I don't think so. Right now. Yeah, so another thing, just if you're new to the channel or whatever, we do have a suggestion part on the Discord server if you're interested in adding a suggestion for something we might do in the future. Obviously it's not a guarantee that I'll be able that I'll cover something or that I'll know how to do it. Sometimes I read them and I think about them and they stew in the back of my mind for 6 months and I'm like, oh, maybe I can think of a way to do that. But so some of you are trying. I don't know what that means. Not sure what that means. Yeah, so yeah, if you'd like to submit any suggestions, you can go to the Discord server and suggest things. Cool. Anything else that folks are thinking about? I mean, I know we haven't done a ton of Houdini like work kind of stuff. So I mean, if anybody has a Houdini question, happy to help or try to think through it. Yeah. Dead air. Don't have dead air on. I always think about that when I'm doing these live streams, is that you're not supposed to ever have dead air on, like you get fined for having too long of dead air on like radio and stuff like that. And so I always think about that when I'm like doing these streams. I'm like, I don't want to have dead air. Not that it matters. I mean, I could have dead air for hours. Nobody's going to be sending me a fine, but it's just funny. It's just very funny. Cool. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I'm not going to just sit here and chat to myself for hours, but, yeah, if you have any more questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm always, interested in, happy to answer any more questions or chat about whatever. The sponsors drop. Yeah, the sponsor of this stream today is me. I can't even think of anything funny. Like, who would be sponsoring this? My wife, maybe. I mean, technically, yeah. Greg has a question there. With a lot of solvers moving over to the SOP side of things, do you have any thoughts of the new workflows versus older? I'm guessing you're saying older DOP setups. I'm guessing that's just a typo. Yeah, I mean, personally, I really like a lot of the SOP workflows. One thing I will say is that I do find the fluid workflows a little weird. And you're welcome about the great info, Greg. No worries. So let's just look at this real quick here. I'm doing a little presentation for a school and I'm talking about SOP stuff. And let's do flip configure. Let's do the lava one. That's fine. It's kind of fun. So this workflow, I think, is, I'm not going to say it's bad. I don't think it's bad. It just is very different, I guess, because I think because it was the last one to be done, I just got so used to the way that SOPs worked in the DOP context that for me, this was a little strange. But I think there's actually some stuff that's really nice about it. Like your container is easily accessible and like all of your settings are here, right? Like that's really nice. I think the weirdest thing is this flip boundary, because like it's a boundary in the sense of, I feel like in like a mathematical concept, right? Where it's like, it's a boundary, like that's how you source things, right? So I think that's a little weird, but like calling it a source isn't exactly right, because it is like boundary conditions into the simulation. So it's ways for particles to come in or out of the simulation, right? Like, cause you can source or sync. So it's creating a boundary, right? So that is, I think that's a little bit hard to like understand exactly. But when you think of like the boundary as like, it's a way to come in or out of the simulation, like an entry or an exit, like that makes sense that it's a boundary, I guess, versus a source. So anyways, that's a little strange, but there are some things I really like about it. Like for example, this uniform pressure here is a lot easier to deal with than doing that in like, in the DOP workflow, because if we look at this, like this uniform pressure is literally just kind of emitting this fluid, just kind of spewing it into the scene, right? And that can actually be really tricky to do in the DOP workflow, because by default it wants to delete particles that are within the sourcing range, and like you have to do divergence and a whole bunch of other things in order to make that kind of expansive type simulation. So I actually think that this is a really like a pretty solid like workflow. Like it's kind of nice to have that. Like you just come in here, change uniform pressure to 10, and it's going to go way further now, right? So like, and it's going to kind of just, I mean, it's moving differently because the temperature is adjusting the viscosity, so that's causing it to kind of burst in different directions. This would be uniform otherwise. But regardless, there's lots of interesting things there. I think the rest of the simulations, because they were kind of like Vellum was kind of created with SOPs in mind, NPM, what else? Pyro, I think took a little while, but I really like the Pyro workflow, I think now, just because it was different at first, but I feel like it's just so simple now that it's kind of nice. So anyways, this one has taken, and I haven't used this flip solver like professionally ever, because it came out once I was past using it professionally. So I think there's a little bit of muscle memory like missing from this for me personally, but it's not maybe quite as fast as the DOP one because there's a lot more overhead kind of in here. But I think that's always the thing, is like the DOP networks are going to be a little bit more lean and just to the point and fast. But like if you're not doing like, I don't know, Avatar, like you can give yourself an extra 30 seconds of time in the simulation if it saves you a day in setting it up. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like whatever at that point. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously just the preset or whatever. I also like that there's presets too. I think that's really cool, versus using all the shelf tools. Like you can just get presets and drop something down, and like that's great. So yeah, so I think from my side of things, that's some of the things I think about. Like if you're doing a gigantic simulation, probably doing it in DOPS is going to be the best way of doing it, because it's going to be the most efficient. These always have kind of layers of things happening there. Fluid compress. Yeah. Yeah, that is important to have the particle separation match. In fact, in this work, so this is another thing that's really nice, is that in this workflow, you don't have to do as much of that matching. You can actually see that this particle separation is grayed out because that is coming through. That's coming through this container geometry here. So this blue container geometry is going down through this whole thing and is actually setting up those things. You can see particle separation isn't even necessary on the particle fluid surface. So there are some real benefits to those nodes being the way they are with those new inputs on them, because those were rebuilt with more inputs and outputs. You can use them in either workflow, it doesn't matter. But if you have that plugged in, I believe that grays it out. So yeah, I would say it's necessary to have the particle separation because I'm pretty sure that drives how this this compression is happening here and how this the pack geometry in the VDB is being made here. So sorry, the pack geometries from it's like I can't remember what the name of the node that's doing that is. What is it? Particles, pack points. That's what it is, I think. Yeah, that's what it is. Pack points. I think that it needs to know that particle separation to be able to pack those properly. So yeah, there you go. Cool. Okay, Gideon asked another question. Is there a way to limit our RAM from using 100%, like getting a message from Houdini, insufficient allocated memory? Yeah, usually what I do for that, I'm guessing you're talking about in a simulation probably. It's always important to kind of check these cached memories here and stuff like that. Like, I have 128 on this computer, so I like to, at most maybe put that to half of it, because then that gives me a good overhead to kind of sit within that range. And 64 gigs is a lot to have in cache. So if you're doing a big simulation, you don't really want it all in cache anyways. Another thing too is that when you go to run that, I believe that cache will still that cache can still be persistent even when you're like caching to like saving something to disk, whether it's through TOPS or through just like a ROP node or whatever. And so a lot of times if we're doing that, I'll turn that cache memory back down or off just to make sure nothing else is getting cached. It doesn't, like when you're saving frame to frame on disk, you don't need to save a cache. There's need to be a cache for that. So that can just make sure that you don't run into any issues with that. The other thing is if you're doing, if you're getting that insufficient allocated memory and it's a OpenCL simulation, that is GPU based, and that is, there's really no good way around that. And for that, for situations like that, it's really just kind of knowing where your threshold is as far as like the amount of stuff that can be done in an OpenCL simulation that your GPU can support. It's not really like there's not really a way to like limit that. I mean, we obviously the software is going to try to make sure it doesn't crash itself, but I mean, GPU RAM is a lot trickier to deal with because everything's fighting for it versus CPU RAM. So if you're doing a big simulation, and it's like a lot of times I find that it's sometimes better just to not be doing it on the GPU because it's going to be less likely to run out of resources, especially because most people have a lot more CPU RAM than GPU RAM. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of a tricky one, I guess, because yeah, it can just kind of, you can very easily throw a ton of RAM. You can easily eat up a lot of RAM through Houdini. You just have to be careful in certain cases, but yep, the typography thing, good suggestion, Greg. I think that's a good one. Yeah, Mops has some typography stuff, really cool. Ruben is asking how to use animated geometry to drive a Vellum sim. Like I animated a line with a carve node and I want to drive my Vellum sim. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. If you want to, what I would suggest taking a look at for some of those like fun and interesting like use cases is take a look at CG Wiki. There's a lot of great resources on there for some of those odd use cases like that. Let's take a look actually and see if I can find anything there. Let's see here. There's also HIP files that you can take a look at. I like that. The GPU just stays asleep when I use Houdini. Yeah, unless you're rendering with XPU, then it'll wake up. Let's see here. I'm not sure if there's anything like that here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, these might be some interesting things to take a look at here. Yeah, like look at this zipper. That's kind of cool. I'm not sure exactly how exactly the what you're thinking of for the geometry to drive it. That's probably where that's where you're going to really probably get a benefit out of the Mops tools and things like that too. That was sort of actually what I was trying to, not that, but trying to like have something driving, you know, kind of changing geometry in your Vellum simulation. I think the trickiest part there is you need to have, yeah, basically if you want any like changing geometry, you need a way to bring it in. So it's usually going to be some sort of custom type of solver, more likely than not. It's not something that's just kind of built into Vellum because you're changing the point count and changing, just having trouble with the workflow using animated geometry for Vellum sims. Yeah, I think there's two different things to think about here. Animated geometry is one thing where you have animated geometry that's moving around. It's another thing to have geometry that's changing its point count because that's a much trickier thing to deal with. Because with Vellum, you need to have an equal number of points for your geometry and your constraint geometry so that you know how they're constrained together. What you could do is I think you'd have to, just trying to think here. I mean, it really depends on what specific thing it is that you're looking for, but a lot of times using something like a SOP solver is going to be your best case for that. So maybe taking a look at some of these things that Matt has on here, I think they're really, really good and gives you a sense for like some of the more interesting kind of examples. Maybe something like this animated crumple, just understanding that maybe a little bit more. That could be cool. This zipper one is certainly going to be, there's definitely a lot to that as well. I'm not sure exactly how he's doing this here. Yeah, so this might be something interesting to take a look at, maybe some of those, and just open the files, poke and prod at them, that type of stuff. Yeah, anyways. So let's see here. What other questions did we have? Yeah, no worries. And if you have questions, you can feel free to ask through the Discord, or like if you have like a specific example of what it is that you're struggling with, yeah, put it in the Discord. Happy to take a look at it. And there's other folks that would, I'm sure, do the same. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody else? Let's see here. Anybody else? Would love to get an option or a way to add reflection using gradient on volumes. That's for like, yeah, for whitewater. Yeah, like how Mantra was. Yeah, I think I mean Mantra is definitely a more robust it's definitely a more robust renderer. It was around for a long time, so there was lots of little features like that were built into it. I think that's kind of a there's always going to be things like that we're constantly trying to figure out. I think better whitewater workflows certainly would be helpful. Volumetric stuff, things like that. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, if anybody has suggestions or ideas or thoughts or anything like that for features for the future, I mean, I'm sure the team knows about them, but put in an RFE if you have an idea or suggestion. You can do that at sideeffects.com. And it's basically just a way to request features, request enhancements, things like that. I mean, won't take you any longer than suggesting the same thing on any number of Discord or servers or Slack channels or whatever. So, send a message in and just give a suggestion as far like a detailed one too, not just like, hey, you should do this, but like, I think this would be really useful. It's got, I'm struggling with whitewater, and I think that if a feature like this existed, it would make things much easier. There used to be this in Mantra. This would be great. I mean, we know that certain things haven't exactly been one-to-one between Karma and Mantra, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. So I think the more that Side Effects hears from people, and that helps drive kind of the roadmap forward, the more we hear from people. I mean, obviously right now we're really focused on the animation tools and things like that. And Copernicus is a big thing as well, but I mean, everything else gets a lot of attention. So, yeah, it's, I think it's always good to hear what people are requesting and wanting and things like that. So cool. Anything else that folks are thinking about or wondering about? Bueller? I actually don't like that movie at all. Never found it interesting. I think I wasn't, maybe it just was out. There's a total side tangent. I don't think I just never really was one to break rules as a young person. So like skipping school felt like, I was like, well, why would I do that? That seems like a bad idea. Anyways. Here's devolving into here's Peter's takes on random movies from the 80s. Cool. Well, that seems like that might be where we're going to end it for today. Maybe a little bit shorter stream than usual, but that's okay. If we don't have questions, I'm not gonna. Oh boy. Somebody's got an art director that's saying everything needs to be in slow motion. So Zach is asking if there's any general guidelines I use when deciding if file caching a sim that'll be time remapped in terms of substeps. Seems sometime none are needed. New velocities can be recalculated. So yeah, that's a tricky one, right? So I think it depends on like what factor of slowdown it is that you're wanting to do and how fast this original simulation is moving, right? So with yeah, there you go. I like that. I like that comment. Yeah. We can't change course mid thing. Yeah. So I think if you're talking about, I know that, so this is something that I actually had to mess with a lot more before the newer time resampling stuff existed, and haven't really done a lot more recently. But if it's particles and points and things like that, like cloth sims, grain sims, even like fluid sims, really, I think, because there's volumes involved there, so there's some trickiness there. But let's just say like a Vellum simulation or something like that. What a utopia you've created. Yeah, exactly. So let's just say you've got something like a cloth simulation. I think the biggest question is how quick is it moving, right? Because if you're moving from point A to B to C very, very quickly, you want it to be a smooth arc, right? And so if you want to slow it down even more than what that smooth arc would be, you're going to run into an issue of it being interpolated straight between each of those points, right? It's kind of like motion blur, right? Like when you have motion blur samples and you have something that's curving and you need to bring it up to a certain level to be able to make sure that it still looks smooth. I think that's a very similar situation that's happening in like when you have geometry that's moving really quickly. So like if something's moving relatively linearly, or even like, I guess you could say like sort of ballistically, I think you're going to like something's falling. You can slow that down quite a bit, because it's when you have these really intense changes of direction and motion, that's where you'll really see weird artifacts coming up, because with a lot of those things, you can only more or less linearly interpolate through it. That's interesting. Yeah. So that's an interesting comment, Mirko. He says, one thing I like to do with fluid sims is to make them become volumes. Then you can blend them easily between frames and then remesh them. He then says VDBs, not volumes, but VDBs. So yeah, I think with the newer workflows, you can do that. I think with the newer workflow, you can interpolate between VDBs. And again, I think it's a very similar thing, is that if you have quick changes in direction, there's only going to be so much. Like if you had like a huge wave like splashing against a rock, like, and you wanted to slow it down like an insane amount, and like it's just, I think you're going to run into there's going to be a level at which that becomes a problem, and it really depends on how like a lot of factors in it. But I do think that that's an interesting comment about using them as volumes. So, I mean, there's going to be situations where one solution versus the other is going to be better. And I don't think there's like a hard and fast rule, but I think trying to like in your mind think about, or even just look at, hey, these are just a simple simulation of something low res. Like, oh, I've got this many points and they're moving like this. Well, of course, if I try to interpolate between those, it's going to do this motion or that motion. There's only so much you can do to kind of fudge that. So like, just, I think those types of things is like thinking about it early and often, right? Instead of like doing your whole simulation and then just going, okay, let's see how this slows down. Like, you're going to run into more problems. And that's kind of like jokingly what Mirko said was like, you're going to run, like, think about it from the beginning. You have to kind of visualize each step of the process and then kind of go from there. So I know it's not really like a guideline, and it's been a long time since I've actually been asked to do that professionally, honestly. Kind of later into what I was doing professionally became a lot less like crazy abstract motion graphics, and actually I ended up doing more like sort of realistic stuff. So anyways, just changed a lot. But anyways. Oh, Gideon, that's an interesting question. Would you recommend multiple hip file workflow or a single hip file workflow while working on a big project? I rarely work with multiple hip files on a single project unless they're so drastically different. And I don't like, if you had some huge scene that you're like, okay, I don't need to open this to be able to do this. Like if you're doing multiple shots and stuff like that, I would have those as different files. But if I'm doing like a large project and has multiple elements to it, one have it all together. You can turn on and off your objects. You can do all that kind of stuff. And that's really going to be where you make your workflow better. There's probably pros and cons to each option, but for me, I more often put more stuff into a hip file and just turn it off so it's not cooking in the background. But yeah, if I was doing like shots from a let's say a music video I was doing, like if I had multiple scenes and shots and stuff like that, I would probably do those in different, I'd probably do multiple shots in a scene in one file, and things then are shared more easily. So like if you have a similar effect that's happening, that might be something you would group in based on a scene or, something like that. So it's better to, you kind of have to think about that in a logical way. Like if you're doing multiple explosions and things like that, well, doing, in multiple scenes, doing those all in different hip files, does it make sense? I mean, if you got 100 shots that you're doing, okay, yeah, probably you want to break those up, but there's kind of, you got to weigh the options of being able to take stuff, right? Because you have all of your thought process right there in your network. So is the ability to be able to copy and paste from one object to another going to be really useful for your project? Or, is the size of each individual object and each individual shot that you're working on going to be so gigantic and take so much data that it's tricky to open up your shot? So I think those are the things I would think about when I'm working by myself. I rarely on like individual projects, I rarely have like a ton of different like hip files. So unless you're doing like I said, like multiple different types of things, I usually just have them, in one thing. Oh, Steve is asking some questions there. So the PSD thing is interesting. I'm not sure to what level we have any ability to do PSD stuff. That's a good question. What I would suggest for you to do, Steve, is to take a look at like our newest kind of thing that we've added to Houdini is Copernicus, which is kind of like a Substance Designer-esque thing. And so I'd take a look at that. It's still pretty new, so it doesn't have like all of the features that Substance Designer would, but I think that's going to be the closest thing you'll have to like texture and image manipulation and stuff like that you'd want to use. So yeah, I'd take a look at Copernicus. That would be something I would look at. The PSD support I don't think is going to be exactly what you're wanting. So you might have to do some stuff ahead of time to be able to get PSDs properly in. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one. Yeah. But yeah, as far as like logos and things like that and AI files and stuff, like, yeah, it can bring in those types of files and work with them. Yeah, you have to kind of know some of the like ways to manipulate them and make them work and stuff like that. But yeah, you can definitely bring in AI, like basic vector curves and stuff like that pretty easily. You probably can bring in SVGs too. I don't know if I've ever even tried to do that. But anyways, cool. All right. Well, it looks like that, I don't know, maybe might be it. Again, just to reiterate, HoudiniHangout.com. There's an invite link there for you to join the Discord server. So please feel free to do that. There is no cost to join or anything like that. Yeah, you're more than you're more than welcome to join that anytime. And yeah, let's see here. I think there might be another comment. Sorry, just clicked away. I haven't been able to do it in Modo. Yeah, well, maybe it's something you'll be able to do in Houdini. I can't say 100% for sure, depending on what it is specifically that you're looking for. But yeah, Copernicus is the idea is that you're able to kind of talk back and forth between your geometry and your textures. So there's the ability to kind of link those two together in some interesting ways. Yeah, it's a new kind of space, and yeah, it should be, yeah. Oh, Zach, you've got a question there. Looks like I'm joining you at the end. It's getting close to the end here. Just doing a Q&A type situation today. So not any fun Houdini stuff right now happening. We're just kind of chatting about things. Anything I'm doing in Houdini with its setup or anything like naming conventions that you think everyone should be doing? Oh yeah, sorry, Illustrator. Yeah, if you save out, Steve, I was just suggesting that before. If you save out like a version 8 Illustrator file, it'll come in with your curves and stuff like that. You have to manipulate it in Houdini, so it's a little bit of a different, like Houdini has vector tools, but then you need to turn it into polygon, or it has Bezier tools and stuff like that, but then you have to turn it into polygons. So it is a different beast. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, anything I'm doing in Houdini with its setup or like naming conventions that I think everyone should be doing. I accidentally found the video. Should I stay? I mean, you can stay if you want to. I'll be around for a little bit longer. Welcome to the stream, though. So I think one thing that I would always suggest that people do is I am always like a big proponent of like your nulls, like trying to be as organized with those as possible. And the main reason that I say that is like for this, like I've got this out velocity, right? And I capitalized it. And if you're new to Houdini, that might seem like a little strange to like, why did I capitalize that? But if I come over here and make a new geo, right? And go inside of it and do an object merge. So we're just moving kind of geometry from one object to another. If I come in here and look at this, we can see we've got all these nodes in here. It might be hard to find stuff, right? But up at the top, it's always these capitalized nodes are going to be up at the top, all caps. So nulls like that are just so easy to find. It's just so nice. Like I know exactly what I'm getting into. I always do that. So that's one thing I always do. Giving yourself some sort of like a color language that helps you know things about your scene when you come back to it, I think is helpful because while it might not mean anything to anybody else, like for me in a scene, like in this case, like say I was going to get velocity geo or something like that. I would make this red if I'm taking the time and like doing things right. I would make this a red node for myself because I know that that's something coming in, right? So just at a glance, like when you're far away, you know where the ins and outs are. Anything that's an in is going to be red for me, and out is going to be like anything going out is going to be a green node, and anything that's like an intermediate step that I might want to reference later, I'll make those yellow. So that's just my shorthand visual for myself. So I know like because I mean, the number of times that you're going to have to go back in and open up an old file of your own and try to figure out what on earth you were thinking, 6 months, a year, 2 years later. I mean, so many times. So I think that's the thing that I am always like really like try to be as kind to your future self as you can, because like there's going to be so many times you try to open something up and you're like, I just want to strangle the guy that made this, and I'm the one that made this. Would be if you have any advice for CGI/lead supervisors that don't have time to actually work in Houdini anymore. Oh man. I've never been one, so I don't know. Tom, that's a great question. I wish I had a good answer for you. I've never been a lead or a supervisor, and I've never worked in a large studio, so I don't know the answer to that. I wish I could give a good answer. I mean, I just think that like, for me, if I was in that situation, I'd be like, look, I mean, I just need to know this stuff so I can better help the team. Like, it's not going to take me long to like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like those are muscles that shouldn't atrophy, and it's beneficial to your employer that they don't atrophy, because for you to have to, it's taken you years to build up that knowledge and ability. They're not just going to be able to jettison you and find somebody else that's going to do the exact same thing, right? Like to get the exact same knowledge. So it's just a good business solution to improve your employees, because it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, that was the company that was why I started working for the company I started working for, because they allowed me to learn Houdini on the job, like, which is huge. It's crazy. I can't believe they let me do that. But I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is like, sure, after 7 years, I left the company. Right. But, they put some effort into that, and I was able to do a lot of cool stuff for them over the years. So anyways, yeah. Steve, the Discord link is at HoudiniHangout.com. You can just go there and find it and join up. Okay, so Gideon is asking an interesting question. This is very technical, but I like it. What makes a HIP file have a larger file size? So there's a couple things that can make it get really, really big. One of them is if you, so mostly it's just nodes. It's just the nodes are being saved in there and things like that. Oh, that's Tom. I'm glad you have some outlet for that. That was kind of why I started this stream, was because I felt like I wasn't using Houdini enough at work, because we just weren't getting those kind of jobs as much anymore. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go do Houdini with people online. And then I got a job. So here we are. But yeah, I understand. I'm glad there's spaces like this where you can get a little hit of Houdini. So, okay. So Gideon, your question is why do the file sizes increase? So there's a couple of things. Mostly the nodes and things like that are going to be pretty minor. You're not really going to get a big difference there. But if you were to do something like freeze a geometry, which maybe some people don't even know how that works, but like there is this little freeze button here, right? So what that'll do is actually freeze anything above it. And it kind of makes this, I'm going to hold down control and do it. So basically it makes it so that nothing above it is going to affect it anymore. So I could move this, sorry, I could go to, let's see, this is bringing in this velocity, right? So I could come up here, move this around. It's not going to change anything because it's frozen up until that point. So I also think if I took this and moved it, I don't think it would do anything either. Yeah, because it's frozen here as well. So, so that is that's one way, because it's actually going to have to save this geometry somewhere in a file, and so that's going, any of those frozen or locked changes is going to be saved with the HIP file. If you use stashes, that's another thing that will save in the HIP file, which stashes are pretty cool. You can do that. You can use a stash thing like this, and anything that comes into the top, you can stash the input, and that'll save it to the file as well. It's good if you have like external geometry or stuff like that that you don't want to send along as like a separate file that's linked. You could just stash it, and then that'll work. So that's another thing. It's so really those are the two things that'll make your file get really, really big. Anything like importing a file is just referencing it from disk. So there's no saved information from those files. So yeah, really the only thing that'll balloon your file size really big is if you start getting into some of those things where you're locking geometry or you're stashing geometry. Most of the rest of it is just small, and there should be a few megabytes for the HIP file. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Cool. All right. I am going to actually make a last call for questions because we're getting kind of close to 2 hours here. And so yeah, we did actually make it all the way there. Yeah, we did it. So yeah, if you guys have any last questions or comments or anything like that, happy to answer them. But if not, we'll start winding things down. Is this Blender? No, we're talking about Houdini here, which is a piece of software that primarily was used for VFX for a long time and now does all sorts of different stuff. glad you stick around. No worries. Nice to have you here. Cool. Also relates to an earlier question about various file sizes. One of the great things about Houdini. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to start winding things down here. If you have more questions or thoughts or anything like that, yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point, Tom. Yeah. So if you version out your files a lot, it's great because you don't have it's not going to take a ton of data. So. Oh, that I'll end. So Johan, this will be the last question and then we'll start wrapping things up. But, so you're asking about what's the difference between LopNets and the stage? There's no difference between them. They're exactly the same. The reason that stage is the built-in context is because USD, that's the idea of basically that's where you compose your scene is on the stage. So that's why you'll see oh gosh, what is the word? Flatten. You see the flattened stage and things like that. you'll see like flatten the stage or flatten a layer. The stage is just your whole composed scene. And so that's why we named that context/stage. So that's the reason for that. And really they're the same thing. You can make a LOPNet, you can use the stage, context or whatever. I pretty often will put my LOPNets next to things like that I'm working on, just to kind of keep track of where things are. I just find it a little easier to jump in and out of, but that's just me. There's not really any difference there that I can really think of. So yeah, that's really hopefully that helps, Johan. There's really not a difference. Yeah, I don't think it really, there's not really much of a difference there. It's just having one that you can put kind of wherever you want to, just like a SOPNet or a DOPNet or whatever. So, great. Yeah, Daniel, this is a VFX program, and it's for any type of person. So yeah, you could use it for studio or for animation or for simulation, whatever you're kind of thinking about. Cool. Awesome. Very cool. Well, hopefully this was a fun little chat today. A little change of pace, I think, is nice for me personally, and hopefully you enjoy just having kind of an open chat about Houdini and random different things. Again, if you'd like to join the Discord, there's a link, HoudiniHangout.com, for the Discord server invite. And yeah, that's where we will end things for today. So thanks everybody for joining, and hope you have a great day. And we will talk again next week. So until then, talk to you later. Have a good one, everybody.